A group of 62 experts and scientists have signed an open letter urging whoever wins the election this weekend to make climate action a top priority. The letter was put together by the Australia Institute, an independent Canberra-based think tank, and ran as a full-page ad in The Age today. Well, for more, we're joined from Canberra by Professor Sackett, the former Chief Scientist for Australia. Penny, thanks very much for joining us.
Good evening. Glad to be here, Andrew.
What has prompted you and others of your colleagues to pen this letter?
Well, you know, the letter that was put together by the Australia Institute and signed by Nobel laureates, experts in the field of climate change, health, economics, all of these fields point in the same direction, and that is that we need immediate action on climate change. The time for talk is over. We need to act now. It's not 2050, it's not even 2030. It's now that we need to act.
For many, this election has been framed as the climate change election. Is that the way you see it?
I do see it that way. There are, of course, a host of other issues that are important, but this is the one where we're actually facing a crisis, an emergency.
You've said in the letter, whichever party wins government this Saturday needs to make urgent action on climate change a top priority for the next Parliament of Australia. But if the coalition were to win this Saturday, would that not be an endorsement of their current policies?
Not at all. Not at all. If the coalition wins Saturday, the message is the same, and that is that climate change needs to be a priority for the coalition, and indeed for all members that sit in the 46th Parliament. So the message is the same regardless of who actually gets over the line Saturday.
Well, this will be interpreted as a political move by yourselves.
Well, look, policy and politics does matter to climate change action. There's no doubt about it. And so if one is really concerned about climate change action, then one needs to get into the public arena and talk about it. So I accept that. But what I don't accept is the notion that climate change in and of itself is somehow a political issue. It's not everywhere in the world. It's certainly not in Europe, where politicians, whether they be on the left or the right side of the spectrum, all recognize that for the health, the well-being of their populace and of the economy, quite frankly, one needs to have a stable, healthy climate and environment, and they work together. That's what I'd like to see in Australia.
Well, just briefly then, let's look at the two majors, the Coalition and Labor, and see what they have on the table and see what you would like both parties to do at this stage. As far as the Coalition is concerned, they do have the Climate Solutions Fund. What would you see them like to do with that, and how much further do you want them to go?
Look, it doesn't, regardless of which party we're talking about, the message is really the same. And that is that over the past 5 years or so, emissions in Australia have been going up. We're not addressing climate change when emissions are going up. They need to come down.
Okay.
And so if the previous policies have not caused emissions to come down, then they have not addressed climate change. And I would actually say, on a personal note, that the single thing that any party, any government could do is to address the issue of fossil fuel and the need to stop building new fossil fuel infrastructure in Australia or anywhere in the world.
So do the parties need to put a benchmark here as far as the targets are concerned for cutting greenhouse gas emissions? What figures would you like to see?
I like to see figures for targets that are stronger than Labor's, but I want to stress that beyond that, I would like to see immediate action to stop throwing fuel on the fire that is burning the earth. And that is that you cannot reduce emissions by continuing to increase them by relying on and building new fossil fuel infrastructure. And that, I think, is a challenge, but it is the one that has to be met if we're going to stay on the safe side of 2 degrees.
So you're nominating a figure beyond 45% cut by 2030 then?
Look, I'm not interested in really getting into the specifics of a particular target. To be quite honest with you, I'm more interested at this point in action. because a target is something that can be set and forgotten. We do need the numbers to be deeper, but what we really need is an immediate plan for fossil fuels, an immediate plan to transition those Australians that depend on the fossil fuel industry for their jobs, immediate plan for agriculture, particularly as it's one of the hardest hit sectors in Australia. We need that immediate plan followed through by action. All parties will need to work together. And this is something that actually makes complete sense to most Australians, that parties work together to safeguard health, to safeguard the climate, and to safeguard the economy that is the low-carbon economy that the rest of the world is embracing.
Professor Penny Sackett, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me tonight.